Your vocab notebook should already be open to a clean page in the science section. We are in the science section. We are starting a new lesson today. And at the top, the title is Chapter 7, Lesson 4. And the title of this lesson is Climate. And then, of course, you have the date, January 25th, 2021. Once you're finished writing that, your book can be open to page 344. Be looking at the page. Your vocab notebook's not even out. Should have been out a long time ago. Okay, everybody should be looking at the picture on page 344. I can't wait for you guys to just decide that you're ready. So I'm just going to go ahead and go, and you get ready when you're ready. That's all we can do. Take a look at this picture. What does this picture show? Colin.
A lot of leaves.
Okay, but what does it specifically show? Victoria?
It shows that it's fall.
Zari, what does it specifically show?
Autumn in Vermont.
Autumn in Vermont. How did you know that, Zari? Have you been to this place and you know that this is what it looks like
No.
in Vermont in autumn? How did you know that?
After it says climate, it says autumn in Vermont.
So we have a caption that tells us exactly what this picture is showing us. When you read the captions, that tells you what it's of. So when I say, what is this a picture of? Find the caption. Okay, look at this picture. I'll be reading the look and wonder. We're not going to answer this out loud. I want you to be thinking about what I'm saying. It is a cool, clear day in October. The leaves have changed color to gold, orange, and red. Somewhere else on Earth, the leaves are green. There, flowers bloom under the sun's warmth. How can the same time of year be so different from place to place? Be thinking about that. We're not going to answer it out loud because this lesson will help us to answer that question. But I want you to think of what you think might be the reason. Okay, please make sure that your books are on your desk. And then go ahead and turn to page 346. Zari, please read the main idea. Everybody,
Main idea.
hold on, sorry. Everybody finger following along. Please make sure your book is on your desk. Go ahead, Zari.
Main idea. Climate is the weather pattern of an area. Many factors affect the different climate regions of the world.
Good. So climate is just the weather pattern in an area. Okay. Kingston, please read next. Loud and slow. Ethan, please read next. Loud and slow. No. Smith, please read next.
What is climate? The weather where you live may change from day to day. Yet you can predict what the weather will be like each season. The pattern of seasonal weather that happens year after year is called climate.
So Smith, what's our first vocab word?
Climate.
Climate. C-L-I-M-A-T-E. Well, that's good because that's the name of our lesson. And you may have been like, what is climate? Well, now you know. Smith, what is climate?
The pattern of seasonal weather that happens year after year.
The pattern of seasonal weather that happens year after year. Remember, if you can't see it up here, where can you see it? If you can't see it up here, where can you see it? Colin?
In our book.
In your book. So that means, depending on the season, we have an idea of what the weather is going to be like in a certain area because there is a pattern from year to year. Like, think about it. Do we know exactly what the weather will be here in Memphis, Tennessee tomorrow? Do we know exactly what it'll be? Do we know exactly what temperature, what it will be doing? No, we don't. But we can guess that the weather will be like what? What can we guess? Kingston. Do you think it'll be warm and rainy tomorrow? Is that normal for January in Memphis? It'll probably be cold or cool because what is the temperature usually like in January in Memphis, Tennessee? Cool or cold? Is it all of a sudden going to be 90 degrees and sunny tomorrow in Memphis, Tennessee? No, because is it ever typically 90 degrees and sunny in January in Memphis, Tennessee? No, we can guess that the weather will be like what in Alaska tomorrow? Zadie?
Cold.
Cold, and probably what else? What type of precipitation do you think Alaska will get tomorrow?
No.
Snow. Now, have you been to Alaska? Can you predict the future? But Zadie, why do you think it'll be cold and snowy in Alaska tomorrow?
Because typically in Alaska it's very cold.
And
Snowy
in
winter.
in winter. Exactly. So even though we don't know exactly what the weather will be tomorrow, we can look at the climate to take a guess, to predict. The pattern of seasonal, if you wrote the pattern of seasonal, please add in the word weather. Do you see how when I reread it, I caught my mistake and I fixed it? Whereas if I hadn't reread it, I would have gone home and been like, oh, the pattern of seasonal. Okay, that makes sense. No, it doesn't. What was I supposed to write there? Now I don't know because I didn't fix it in the moment. Make sure you reread. So climate tells us the pattern of seasonal weather that happens year after year. So what is it typically like in the winter in this place? It's a pattern. It stays the same. Does that mean it will never, ever change? Zari?
No.
No. Over time it could change, or you could have a weird day here and there. Like today, the high is 70 degrees. Is that normal for Memphis, Tennessee in January? No. Does that mean it can't happen? No, because we have proof it is happening right now. But it just means it's not normal. We wouldn't necessarily say, yes, it will be 70 degrees in January in Memphis. It just may happen. Okay, we got to keep moving. Okay, read next. Mason. Loud and slow. We're just going to start reading one paragraph at a time, probably till the end of the year. Everybody's fingers should be ready to follow along.
Climate is not the same everywhere.
A little louder.
The city of Phoenix is in the southwestern United States. The climate there is warm and dry all year. Snow and rain rarely fall. Seattle is in the northwest.
paragraph is saying is just because it's typically cool and kind of rainy in January in Memphis, is that how it is everywhere on Earth? Is it cool and rainy everywhere on Earth in January just because it is in Memphis? No. I mean, it says if the city of Phoenix in the southwest United States has a warm and dry climate all year, are we going to say it's going to be cold and rainy in Phoenix tomorrow? What are we going to say it's going to be in Phoenix tomorrow? Zadie?
Probably warm and dry.
Warm and dry. What about at the beach? In Florida? Not all beach, because some beaches are cold, but the beach in Florida. Think about it. What do we think the weather might be like there tomorrow? Zari?
A breeze probably, but still warm enough to go to the beach.
Probably warm enough to sit on the beach. Maybe not warm enough to get in the water, but probably warm enough to sit on the beach. Otherwise, old people wouldn't go to the beach all winter long. They wouldn't go to Florida all winter long. Why would they go from one cold place to another? They wouldn't. So even though climate tells us the seasonal weather that happens year after year, it is different depending on where you are. Okay? Otherwise, that would mean the whole earth would have the same weather all the time. Okay. Read next. Carla. Loud and slow.
Farmers depend on climate to grow their crops. Some crops grow well in cool climates with steady rain. Other crops need dry climate. Still others need warm, humid climate.
So let's talk about this. We know of two places that they've mentioned here. What is the climate in Phoenix, Arizona like? What is the climate in Phoenix, Arizona like? Colin.
Warm and dry.
Warm and dry. What is the climate of Seattle, Washington like? Zari?
Cool and wet.
Cool and wet. Who can think in the United States of a place that has a warm, humid climate? So not really rainy, but there's lots of moisture in the air. Who can think of a place in the United States that has a warm and humid climate? Not all over the world. We're just thinking the United States. Mason? Tennessee? Is it warm and humid all the time here, year round? Smith?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Let's say Honolulu. Honolulu, Hawaii. Okay, now let's think of some crops. Apples. Oops. Need low temps, that means low temperatures, and a lot of water. Where do you think would be the best place to start your apple farm? Phoenix, Seattle, or Honolulu? Apples need low temperatures and a lot of water. Zadie?
Seattle.
Seattle. I wish I'd done them better. So if we want to grow apples, we're going to go to Seattle. Avocados need high temps, and they can survive without much water. Oops. They don't need a whole lot of water. Where would you put your avocado? Where would you start your avocado farm? Kingston? Phoenix. oranges can handle high temps. And they need a lot of water. Where would you start your orange grove? Mason. Honolulu. Why would we put our avocado farm in Phoenix? Why would we put our avocado farm in Phoenix? Zadie.
Because the climate in Phoenix is good to grow it there.
Why? Why is the climate in Phoenix good for avocados?
Because for avocados, we need high temperatures and they can go without not much water. And Phoenix is warm and dry.
Very good. Why would we start our apple orchard in Seattle? Why would we start our apple orchard in Seattle? Aaron?
Apples need low temperatures but a lot of water.
So why is Seattle a good place for apples needing low temperatures and a lot of water?
Because Seattle it has
What else? So what is its climate like? There's a place you can look. Not all the answers are in our book. It's cool and wet. Why is Honolulu the best place for our orange grove? Zari?
Because it has high temps, but still it has humidity can also cause water.
So oranges need high temperatures and a lot of water. Honolulu is warm, so there's those high temperatures, and it's humid. Remember, humidity, that's the noun. Humid just is an adjective. It describes something. Humidity is the noun. That is the moisture in the air. So Honolulu has a lot of moisture in the air, which means they probably can get a lot of water. Okay. So does everybody see why farmers, if you want to go into farming, you really have to pay attention to where you live. If I lived in Phoenix and I wanted to grow apples, would I do very well? No. If I lived in Seattle and I was like, I'm going to grow oranges, would my farm be very profitable? No. So farmers really depend on the climate. Okay. Victoria, please read next. But you don't have to ask me. Just turn your body. Doesn't require a whole lot of discussion. Everybody finger ready to follow along. Loudly.
Farmers depend
Oh, we already read that. Aaron.
climate regions.
Climate. It looks like climate, but it's actually climate.
Climate regions. Think of climate as the average weather in a certain place for a long period of time. It has similar patterns of temperature, humidity, and precipitation and wind. we can call such an area a climate region.
So, climate includes temperature, humidity, precipitation, and wind. So if a very large area has similar temperatures, similar amounts of humidity and precipitation, and similar wind patterns, we can call it a climate region. That whole region has the same climate. Read next. Cullen, loud and slow.
Polar regions have cold climates with low precipitation. Tropical regions are near the equator.
Pause. Let's look at the picture. Sorry. So find the polar region. Where's the polar region? What polar region is shown? Kingston. Antarctica. So it's very cold and has what? Does it have a lot of precipitation? Kingston? No, Antarctica is a polar region because it's very cold and has low precipitation. But I see a lot of snow. And isn't snow a kind of precipitation? Why would there be so much snow if there's not much precipitation? Kingston?
It's very, very cold.
It's very cold. So what happens when they do get a little precipitation? What happens to that snow? If it stays cold all the time? It freezes. Does it ever melt? No. So even though it has a lot of snow, that's like years and years and years worth of snow. It builds up because does it ever melt like it does here? No. Okay. Cullen? Oh, then Cullen read about tropical regions. Find the tropical region. Where is this tropical region? Zadie?
Near the equator.
What is it called? Cullen?
Ecuador.
Ecuador. Oh, keep reading, Cullen, and then tell us why Ecuador is a tropical region.
There, the climate is warm,
Not humid. Go slow.
humid, and rainy.
So, why is Ecuador part of a tropical climate? What happens there?
The climate is warm. It has humid and
Remember, humid is an adjective, humidity is a noun. So we can't have humid because we can't have a describing word. It's like I can't have pretty, but I can have something that is pretty. So I can't have humid, but I can have something that has a lot of what?
humid.
Not humid. That's an adjective. I can't have an adjective. I can have a noun. So what's the noun form of humid? Humid is the adjective. I can't have
Oh, humidity.
humidity. There we go. And what else?
And it's raining.
We can actually look at that picture. Can you see the humidity? Can you see that it would be very wet? Why? What is that? What do we see in this picture that tells us it's probably going to be real wet? Victoria.
We see fog.
Fog. And what is fog?
It is stratus clouds.
It's stratus clouds. And what are stratus clouds made of?
They're made of rain and dust.
Of water and dust particles. So if something is made of water and you're touching it, how is it going to feel? Class.
Wet.
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 Okay. Colin, keep reading.
Temperature.
Not temperature. Go slow. Read the whole word. Chunk it. Carla, please make sure you're paying attention. Chunk it. Read each syllable. Don't wait till the end. Carla, I said, no, I did not ask you to read. I can now tell that you weren't paying attention because I wasn't asking you to read. I was asking you to pay attention. So now I can tell that you weren't paying attention because you weren't even listening to what I had to say.
Temperate.
Temperate is what it looks like, but it's like climate, where we don't say climate, we say temperate. So climate, temperate.
Temperate regions lie between polar and tropical regions. Temperate climates often have 4 seasons. Some have just 2 seasons, a dry one and a rainy one. Still other regions are dry and cold.
So, temperate regions, let's see, polar and tropical are like exactly opposite, right? Polar is very cold and very dry. Tropical is very warm and very wet. Do you see? They're like 2 complete opposite ends of a line. Completely different from each other. Temperate is everything in between. But temperate can change because look, we have 2 ends of the line. Polar, cold and dry. Tropical, warm and wet. But everything, look how much comes in between. Look how much of my arms and my body is in between. So temperate can be any of those things. It can be cool and wet. It can be warm and dry. It can be all four of those things all at once. Like places that have all four seasons, they have a definite spring, summer, fall, and winter. Or they can be a little closer to one or the other. But they're in between. Everything that comes between cold and dry and hot and wet is temperate. So we see two examples of temperate regions. We see Canada and Arizona. But are Canada and Arizona's climates pretty different? Are they the same? Think of Canada, think of Arizona. Are their they're both temperate, but are their climates exactly the same? No. What is Canada like? Mason? Cold. What is Arizona like? Hot. But is Canada definitely super cold and wet like Antarctica? And is Arizona super hot and wet like, is Canada really cold and dry like Antarctica? And is Arizona really hot and wet like Ecuador? Is it? Look at what it tells us. What does it say about Arizona? Is it hot and wet like Ecuador? What is it? Hot and... Zari?
Can you say that question again?
Is Arizona really hot and wet like Ecuador?
No.
It's really hot and...
Dry.
Dry. So it's temperate. It's in between. It's not tropical. It's not polar. It's in between. Then we have Alaska that is on the cooler side, but it's still temperate. It's not completely cold and dry like Antarctica. Come on, guys. Some of you are you're just zoning out, which is, like I've said, if you zone out, it makes your work that you have to do on your own so much harder. Then you get frustrated and upset. Your mom or dad or whoever's helping you gets frustrated and upset because they're like, didn't you already learn this? And you're like, no. And they're like, well, I'm not supposed to teach you. Guess what? Did you actually not learn this? I mean, you didn't. But was it because I didn't teach you? If you get home and you say, no, I didn't learn this, why didn't you learn it? Cullen.
Because you zoned out.
Because you zoned out. Come back. It's the end of the day, I know, but we still have all this left to do. I don't care what time of the day is. The only time I care is when it's time to go. Then, okay, I'll send you home. But until then, your brain is here. Otherwise, you got to do it all tonight without any help from me. So, Zadie, please read next.
What determines climate? Several things affect a climate region over time. These include latitude winds and currents.
Oh, is latitude winds one thing?
These include latitude winds and currents.
There you go. See why commas are important? Otherwise, we might think latitude winds are one thing. And then we're like, well, what's the third thing? Okay, Zadie, go ahead. That was really short. So just tell us, read the first paragraph under the next subheading.
Latitude. The thin lines that run east and west across some maps are lines of latitude. Latitude is a measure of how far a place is from the equator.
Remember, we learned about that in social studies. All those sideways lines, they lined up with what? The prime meridian or the equator? They were parallel with what? Was it the prime meridian or was it the equator? Zari?
The equator.
The equator. So lines of latitude told you how far away the place was from the equator. The farther it was, what do we remember about the weather? The farther from the equator, what happened to the weather? What happened to the temperature? As you got further away from the equator, what happens to the temperature? Smith?
It gets colder.
It gets colder because if you're moving away from the equator, what are you moving towards? Cullen?
The South Pole.
The South Pole or the
North Pole.
North Pole. And what is the temperature like at the poles?
Very cold.
Very cold. What about the closer you get to the equator? What happens to the temperature? Aaron? It gets warmer because you're getting further away from what? And what is the temperature at the equator like? Really warm. So now you guys already know what you need to really understand this next subheading, but we're going to go ahead and read it anyway. Keep going.
The equator's latitude is set at 0 degrees. Latitude increases as you move north or south from there. The highest latitude is at the north and south poles. Both are 90 degrees.
Good. So now we know what we have a little refresher on what lines of latitude are, but has it told us how that affects climate yet? Has our science book told us how that affects our climate yet? But do we already have an idea of how it affects our climate? Because we were listening in social studies, hopefully. Aaron, please read next. Loud and slow. It's super important that you read loud so everybody can hear, because this is a very important part of this lesson. Why does lines of latitude affect the climate, or how?
Climates near the equator are warm and rainy.
We already know that. We know the equator is very warm, so the closer a place is to the equator, the warmer it is. But now we also know it's not only warm at the equator, but what else? Carla?
Rainy.
Rainy. So if a place is close to the equator, it's not only warm, but it is also what? Cullen?
Rain.
Rainy. What type of climate? What is that climate region called that has warm and rainy climate? Zadie?
Warm and humid.
Well, what is that? What is the name of that climate region? Zari?
Tropical.
Tropical. If we go back a page, we see tropical, that last paragraph under climate regions. It says tropical regions are near the equator. There, the climate is warm, humid, and rainy. So what kind of region is everything along the equator? What kind of climate region is everything along the equator? Smith?
A tropical region.
A tropical region. Okay, Aaron, keep going. Loud, loud, loud.
Between the equator and the poles, the climate is mild or temperate.
Temperate, because it's in between. Remember, we learned there's polar and there's tropical, and everything in between is what type of climate? We have polar, we have tropical, everything between is what type of climate? Zari?
Temperate.
Temperate. So temperate is mild, can be, it's temperate. Hold on one second. Sorry, can you tell us one more time? If the climate is not polar or tropical, it is what?
Temperate.
Temperate. It's in between. So we know everything between the equator and the poles is what, Aaron?
Temperate.
Temperate. Okay, well, what about near the poles?
Near the poles, the climate is cold all year.
It's cold all year. We know that near the poles, it is cold. It is what type of what type of climate region? What type of climate region is it at the poles? Smith?
Polar region.
Polar. Poles. Polar. Poles. Polar. What is the base word of polar? Zari?
Pole.
Poles. So we know the climate near the North and South Pole is what, class?
Polar.
Polar, which
Polar.
means not only is it cold, but it is also what? Not only is it cold near the poles, but it is also what? Smith?
Dry.
Dry, because if we go back to the page before, The very first sentence of that second paragraph under climate regions says polar regions have cold climates with low precipitation. If there is low precipitation, it is very wet or dry? Class.
Wet.
Wet.
If there is, okay, some of you just heard. If there is low precipitation, does it mean it is wet or dry? Low precipitation, does that mean there's a lot of precipitation or not much? Aaron, if there's not much precipitation, would it be wet or would it be dry?
Dry.
Dry. Come on, guys, think. I know that you're not trying to tell me that if it doesn't rain a lot, there's low precipitation, that it's wet. Please think before you answer questions, otherwise you end up sounding silly. Do you want to sound silly when you're not? Then think about the questions. Otherwise you're telling somebody, I do think that if there's not much precipitation that it would be wet. Even if that's not what you think. If you're not thinking about the questions, that's what you're telling people. Okay. Let's read about global winds and ocean currents, and then we'll save the rest for tomorrow. Okay, so we already know latitude can help determine climate, because latitude tells us that you are closer or further away from what? There's two possible answers to this question. Latitude tells us that you are closer or farther away from what? Zari?
Equator.
The equator. If you're closer to the equator, what is your climate going to be? Aaron? And? Wet. If you're closer to the equator, the climate will be warm and wet. What if you're closer to the poles? Zadie?
It'll be cold.
Cold and
Dry.
dry. Actually, we'll just save the rest for tomorrow. That is not the only thing that affects climate. That's just one of them. Okay, we will finish that lesson tomorrow. Any questions about latitude before we continue? Okay. Go ahead and close your science books. Leave your vocab notebooks out, because I can guarantee you if I tell you to put them away, even when I tell you to bring them back out, half of you will forget to, you just won't bring them back out. It's not that you'll forget, you just won't.